But if you look at everything that they say, it's all predicated on that.
Yes.
It's all predicated on the idea that white people are somehow inherently
even the terminology
better.
They use.
Yeah, white supremacy. I mean, I never.
That's not even what I'm thinking.
Well, I would never say that.
Yeah, but the fact they throw that around all the time, right? As if like they actually believe that ideology.
They want you to think, well, white people are supreme. I don't think that. I just think we're normal.
I even think, quote unquote politically correct terms like person of color, people of color. Because what that is saying is all that means is non-white.
Yeah.
So the reason that term bothers me is because it's simultaneously way too broad and way too specific. So there's no term for non-black person.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a term of like everyone who's not black.
Why would there be?
Yes.
Yes,
but there's a term for everyone who's not white.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you are you could be Arab, you could be Latino, you could be mixed, you could be
Asian,
indigenous, you could be Asian,
anyway.
all sorts of Asian, you could be Indian, you could be Pakistani, you could be African, you could be Caribbean, what you all fall into that people of color basket.
Yeah.
Which to me I'm like, okay, so you're saying it's like white people and everybody else. I mean, I don't know globally what percentage of the population, quote unquote, white people are.
About 13%.
13%. I was going to say probably under 15% globally. So the vast majority of the world, according to this labeling, is people of color. But at the same time, it's also way too broad because then you're also lumping in all of these completely disparate groups.
Often you hate each other. Often you really don't like each other.
They don't have anything. There's no sort of through line between Indians and Nigerians and Pakistanis and Iraqis and Peruvians and Colombians. I'm like, what is this term? Right? Like people of color. And they say it as if it's just this sort of this block. This sort of block. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
But that's the thing. You can see what they're trying to do is bring into coalition non-white people against white people.
Yes.
I mean, why would you? And like you said, that absolutely puts the idea of white people on a pedestal. So no, we've got to bring the entire rest of the world into agreement against you. It's like, that's wild. Like, why would that be the way you think? But it has to be predicated on the idea that they think that white people have some sort of special superior place in the world. And that's just not true.
Yeah, well, they say it. I mean, they use the term white supremacy more than anybody. It's also strange because prior to about 7 or 8 years ago, I want to say there was like at least a decade period of my life where like I almost never heard the term white supremacy. And then it sort of came back into the lingo in mid 2010s and they started using it in this new way, which simply means, well, it can literally mean, sometimes they use it to mean anything that's good. Sometimes they're literally like, here are examples of white supremacy. Being on time.
I know.
Hard work ethic.
Saving for the future.
And I'm looking at this like,
I'm a white supremacist and I didn't know it.
I'm like, wait, hang on here. Are these not just things that make an individual or a community more likely to be successful?
Yeah.
And you're calling that white supremacy, or it's just a room of people and it's predominantly white, and that might be in Ireland or England or Sweden. And it's suddenly like, oh, this is white supremacy. I'm like, no more than if you took a photo of a boardroom in Nigeria. And no more than that photo is black supremacy. No one would look at that look, here's here are MPs in China. No one would look at that. Oh my gosh, look at this Asian supremacy, right? Where's the diversity?
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense. But then when it comes to European nations, or predominantly white countries, there's this weird, and what's even weirder about it is, I must say, it mostly comes from white people.
Oh yeah.
It's
because they're guilty. They feel guilty.
It's very odd. Like I'll be there and I'm just there like, okay, like I'll see some outcry. Yeah. I remember it was this year, wasn't it, where they had the royal family. That was that balcony photo of the royal family.
Yeah.
And somewhat predominant person made a comment about the lack of diversity, or how white the British royal family was. And I'm genuinely just like, what on earth are you What are you talking about?
What I love about this is that it's that point that you're like, the exclusivity of the royal family has gone too far, is it? It's like, no, bro, you don't understand how exclusive this family is. Like, to get into the royal family, you have to marry into it. You know, there's no diversity hiring in the royal family. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you can't apply to join it. I can't join it. It'll forever exclude me, and you know what? That's fine.
Yeah,
like, it's not about the color, but I mean, it is for these people. But the thing about this is that the alternative. So you notice that what we're using here are categories. But like I said, they're at once insanely specific, but also ridiculously broad. Mm-hmm. So they reference something that's a really, really shallow description of a person, but also it includes literally everyone LGBTQ. On Earth.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones, and we are here once again to talk about white supremacy, because this is a very interesting clip that we just watched. The black guy, I think his name is Zumbi, and they're talking about white supremacy as if it is a myth. So
wait, you said his name was Toby?
Zumbi.
Oh, I thought I heard Toby.
I believe. Look at you.
So I thought I heard Toby. My fault.
He and the white guy are talking about white supremacy as it's a myth in the mythological form. They did have some good points that we hit on, and some of the points that we hit on last week about lumping non-white people into one group. But the overall tone is that there's a group of liberal white people who are talking about white supremacy, and the way that, and the picture that they're painting of white supremacy leads Zumbi and the other guy to think that, well, white supremacy isn't real, and gives them talking points, making jokes and making fun out of it. And so, of course, we're here to break this thing down and make some sense out of this and put things into context.
I had a question real quick.
Go ahead.
Do we know if Zumbi has all of both of his feet?
Zumbi, I don't know. I don't know, bro. We're gonna find out as we talk. We're gonna find out as we talk. So, I mean, well, go ahead, and since you already started, go ahead and tell us what's on your mind, brother. What do you think about the video? What do you think about the discussion?
I was just curious because you said his name was Zumbi. I thought I heard.
I think it's Zubi. Zubi. I think Zubi? I might have said it wrong. It might be Zubi or something like that.
So, and I don't want to disrespect the
I know I'm messing his name up. I'm not trying to mess his name up on purpose.
Yeah, I don't want to disrespect the young man by picking on his name, but I thought I heard Toby, which prompted the question of, did he have all of both of his feet? And what was his experience like before the interview and after the interview? Like, were there people on the other side of the camera? So, it's just a lot of interesting questions. They did make a lot of interesting points. Mm-hmm. I think, and it's funny, right? Because when you hear two wildly uninformed people talking about a subject, it's always interesting when they accidentally make a point. Because like the big part of their grievance seemed to be with white people, and I agree with that. Especially when you start talking about people of color. But this is where it's like y'all are wildly uninformed. People of color was actually a term created by black people as a part of trying to build a coalition. They moved away from it because white people did exactly what y'all are doing right now. They started talking about it while being wildly uninformed and just started using it.
Right.
And it became what y'all are complaining about. Same thing is happening with BIPOC currently. It was started by people, a group of people that wanted to strengthen the alliance between non-white people. So it is intended to be a reference to non-white groups. And then white people Columbused it. And so now we're moving on to another term. And my question for black people becomes, why do y'all keep white people have been Columbus and stuff consistently? So I don't know why we keep trying to find a way to create something that's uncolumbusable, but whatever. So I'm trying not to go too, because it's interesting, right? Like white supremacy, I don't consider myself a supremacist. I don't consider myself supreme. I just consider myself normal. Well, yeah, that's a part of like white supremacy. White people don't have to think they're supreme. They're the standard. The standard doesn't think that there's anything special about it. It's all of the people being measured against it.
Right.
So it's kind of, we get it. But one of the things I agree with though is that I do think that they're asking the way they're positioning it. I think black people need to ask themselves that question. Why do we feel like, and I know we have, but I'm saying like, I think as a community, we need to ask ourselves these questions. Why do we use the term white supremacy? Like, if you haven't thought about that and you're just using it, why are you using it? Right. What are you referencing? What are you talking about? When we start talking about, you're hearing black people using BIPOC and people of color, what are you referencing? Why is that necessary? When you hear them talking about success, like we know we can talk about why that's dangerous because, again, we're talking about white people to being the standard. But as the average black person, what does that mean to you when we start saying, well, these are just the things you have to do to be successful? Successful according to whom? How do we define success? These are all part of this conversation that centers around white supremacy. And contrary to what they both said, you do hear Asian supremacy. You don't hear it that frequently, but you do hear it.
Right.
And I have heard black supremacy. And contrary to also what they were both. So, and this is where I'd be like, the white dude must have grew up in a James Baldwin type situation. Because I'm sending strays at everybody. I got to chill out.
Yeah.
So, but I'm like, if you're a black person and you grew up, well, I don't know, because maybe he's not in America. So maybe they're talking about on a global stage. Let me say this. If you're a black person in America and you went through a period of your life that amounted to years and you didn't hear anything about white supremacy?
Hey, what that say about your situation?
That, I mean, you're experiencing proximity to whiteness is the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I've never gone a year without hearing about white supremacy, and I'm 40. So, yeah. Now it's an interesting conversation that they were having because, like you did say, it's coming from ignorance of them not really knowing what white supremacy is. They're framing white supremacy in more of a framework of white supremacy is because, or in these specific areas, the claim of white supremacy is out there because white people have these great numbers, rather than looking at it from a power standpoint. Because white supremacy can exist in an area. Well, we talked about racism a couple shows ago, where the guy telling us how he learned how to be a racist. But we've also talked about different places where, like cities that are predominantly black, but white people still have the power. So getting people to understand white supremacy is about overall numbers. But once we have the overall numbers and once we have the overall power, we can have small numbers in this one place and be the minority population in this one place and still have the predominant power in this place. So it's not about population per se. It's about populations that have power. Because there are great populations that don't have power. So, but PC, man, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you just described the entire continent of Africa and every major city in America. Oh my God. Oh boy. Because I'm trying to be good, but she just be calling me, man. She should be calling me, man. I mean, some people just need to shut the fuck up. If you don't know what you're talking about, then you just don't know what you're talking about. Just because you're sitting there and, you decide you want to have a silly ass conversation about a very serious topic, you should at least do some research. Like, it's like these guys didn't put any thought whatsoever into this. This is just shooting from the hip, but is all they got is blanks. Because I was confused at first. At first, I thought they were talking about. Black people because they kept using the word they. They're using the word white supremacy, this and the other. So it wasn't until like the last part of that conversation I realized they were talking about white people. So I had to tear up all my damn notes. Because I thought they took this in a whole different direction. I think they were at first talking about black people, but I think they spent it. And
I agree.
Because when they say they are using it, the white guy said they. Well, who?
Yeah.
When he was saying they, he wasn't saying we.
Yeah, his name is Zuby. Yeah, Zuby is his name. Zuby and Carl Benjamin.
Oh, so they brothers.
So the white dude is Zuby.
No, the black dude is Zuby, and the white guy is Carl Benjamin.
Okay, so the white guy gets two names.
I was just thinking that. So the white guy gets two names. Got you.
Okay. All right, so we gotta treat this dude like he Prince. So because the whole concept around people of color, like Pat said, black people have been consistently trying to redefine a term that is drawn away where we can create our own sort of like legacy from it, because the stains of being called a Negro have is tied directly into slavery and all the bondage and the bad history with that. I get that part. Same ones that said we can redefine the word nigga by just taking the ER off of it and just using the A and saying it with the A. But okay. But the same ones that'll be in the comments saying, well, black is just a crayon, it's a color, it's not really, it's a racial construct. All of the shit is a social construct.
Mm-hmm. They have real life repercussions come from these social constructs.
Yeah, right.
And that's all that matters.
So, like Pat said, they did stumble on some good things. Like there's no such thing as like a word for people who aren't black, like a universal word. But you don't do that for a group that has already assessed its dominion. White supremacy, when it was discussed, wasn't even the phrase wasn't even created by black people. You had the founding fathers of this country, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They have written works about how America was created for white people, so we must preserve the institution of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. That was from them. So when black people talk about those who are schooled in it, at least, and did it just to, they took this device, this thing here, they took this device and they decided to, do more than just, watch fight videos or viral, TikToks or whatever. They actually understood that when we're talking about the term white supremacy, we're identifying it as, from the perspective of Washington, from the perspective of Jefferson, those who founded this country, from the perspective of those who created and generated not just the Constitution, but in their Declaration of Independence. They made no mention of black people. They identified citizens, and then they put stipulations in the Constitution to make sure that black people, black men in particular, would never be defined as people, as a citizen in this country. So when you look at it from that perspective, identifying white supremacy is identifying the system, socially, politically, economically speaking, that we are currently in. It's not identifying white people as, superior to blacks, although most black people still have that sort of like, racial hypergamy. Shout out to BGS more for that one. The idea of ascending to whiteness and seeing it. So subconsciously, yeah, a lot of Negroes want to see white people as being supreme. So changing what we call it doesn't change what it is.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And people who do that try to escape the fact that white folk, while racism is a structure, a system of power, and power and controls that they created, it's up to the people that's affected the most by it to change its effects on them. And we're too used to trying to have these silly ass conversations, cross table conversations about the social aspect of racism, white supremacy. And when you throw racism in front of it, it totally changes the whole dynamic of that phrase. Shout out Elder Neely Fuller for that phrase, for phrasing it that way to make it more understandable. When you have that concept, when you understand that, it's up to black people to change their power dynamic.